You just spent $55,000 on an F-150. And right now, that timing chain is one cold start away from exploding. No check engine light, no weird noises, no warning at all. Then one morning, you turn the key. Click. Nothing. The mechanic calls 3 hours later. He says 2 words that will cost you $10,000. Tensioner failed. And here is the part Ford doesn't want you to hear. This wasn't bad luck. This was engineered to fail. Let me tell you about a customer named Mike. Mike owned a 2017 F-150 3.5-litre EcoBoost, 92,000 miles, serviced every 5,000 miles like a religion. One Tuesday, he's merging onto the highway. Truck feels fine. Then a tiny rattle. Lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then silence again. He ignored it. 3 days later, the engine shut off at 70 miles per hour. No power steering, no brakes. His family was in the back seat. The repair bill? $8,400 for a used engine. $12,700 for a new one from Ford.
And here is the nightmare most owners don't see coming. But here's the scary part. Mike's timing chain didn't snap from age. It snapped from a part that costs $38, and Ford knows exactly when it will fail. Why doesn't the truck warn you? Because the failure happens inside the oil system. Your F-150 uses a hydraulic timing chain tensioner. It runs entirely on engine oil pressure. When it works, the chain stays tight. No noise, perfect timing. When it fails, the tensioner collapses internally. But here is the deception. The chain doesn't snap immediately. It gets loose. Just a few millimeters of slack, not enough to trigger a check engine light, but enough to skip a tooth on the camshaft sprocket. And this next part is what destroys engines completely. When that chain jumps even one tooth, your pistons hit your valves at 2,000 revolutions per minute. That's not a repair. That's an engine replacement. Every forum on earth tells you to listen for the death rattle. Cold start noise. Loose chain? You'll hear it, right? Wrong. And this is where most owners get trapped. The 3.5L EcoBoost and 5.0L Coyote engines fail without the classic rattle. Here is why: the tensioner doesn't break externally. The internal check valve fails. That valve is smaller than a pencil eraser. When it fails, oil drains out of the tensioner the second you shut off the engine. So when you start the truck, the chain is completely loose for the first 2 seconds. But 2 seconds isn't long enough for most owners to notice. By the time you hear a rattle, the chain has already stretched and the guides are already broken. Wait, it gets worse. Ford designed your truck to save fuel by lowering oil pressure at idle. On paper, that's smart. In reality, that low idle pressure is the exact condition that kills timing chains. Here is the mechanical truth. Your tensioner needs at least 25 psi of oil pressure to stay locked, but at hot idle, your variable displacement oil pump drops to 12-15 psi. That's not enough. So every time you sit at a drive-through or wait in a school pickup line, your timing chain is bouncing against the guides. Bounce, bounce, hundreds of tiny impacts per minute. And this is the part Ford's service manual won't admit. That bouncing doesn't just wear the chain, it hammers the timing chain guide brackets until they snap. When a guide breaks, a piece of hard plastic falls into your oil pan. Then your oil pickup tube sucks it up. Then you lose all oil pressure instantly, and that's not a timing chain job anymore. That's a scrap engine. Not all F-150s are created equal. If you own a 2011 to 2012 3.5L EcoBoost, your tensioner has a plastic internal ratchet. That ratchet dissolves inside the engine. If you own a 2015 to 2017, your timing chain is thinner than the previous generation. Ford changed suppliers. The new chains stretch twice as fast. And if you own a 2025.0L, you have a different nightmare. But here's the scary part. The 2020 Coyote engine uses a belt-driven oil pump. That belt runs inside the engine, submerged in oil. When that belt fails, pieces clog the timing chain tensioner screen. Then the tensioner collapses instantly. No warning, no rattle. just sudden catastrophic failure. And Ford issued a technical service bulletin, but not a recall. That means you pay, not them. Every F-150 owner believes the same lie. I change my oil every 5,000 miles. I'm safe. You are not safe. And this is where most owners get trapped. The timing chain tensioner has an oil feed hole smaller than a grain of rice. Once sludge starts forming, that hole plugs up. Sludge doesn't start at 5,000 miles. It starts at 3,500 miles on conventional oil, at 4,500 miles on synthetic blend. By 5,000 miles, the damage is already done. Here is the insider secret that dealerships use on their own trucks. They change oil every 3,000 miles. Not because the manual says so, because they've seen hundreds of tensioners fail from extended drains. One extra week between oil changes can cost you $8,000, but oil changes alone won't save you, because there's another hidden killer inside your engine right now. You've heard of the F-150 cam phaser rattle, that diesel sound on cold starts. Most owners think it's just annoying. It's not annoying. It's a death sentence for your timing chain. Here is why. When a VCT phaser fails, it doesn't lock properly. The camshaft moves back and forth. Every time it moves, it yanks the timing chain. Yank, slack, yank, slack. That motion stretches the chain links permanently, and here is the part Ford doesn't advertise. A stretched chain changes your camshaft timing by up to 10 degrees. Your engine computer can only correct 5 degrees, so the other 5 degrees, that's lost power, wasted fuel, and overheated valves. Wait, it gets worse. That stretched chain will eventually jump timing completely, and when that happens, you don't get a warning light, you get a loud POP, then silence, then a tow truck. Let me show you exactly when this happens. 60,000 miles. The tensioner check valve starts leaking. You don't know it, but every cold start, the chain is loose for 2 seconds. 80,000 miles. The chain has stretched 2%. The guides are starting to crack. Still no check engine light. 95,000 miles. One guide breaks. A plastic piece falls into the oil pan. Your oil pressure drops 10 psi. The only symptom? A slightly rougher idle that most owners ignore. 102,000 miles. The remaining guide shatters. The chain goes completely slack. On the next acceleration, it jumps 3 teeth. Then the pistons hit the valves. Then you're shopping for a new truck. And this is the part that should make every F-150 owner furious. Ford knows the exact failure point. They have internal documents showing tensioner failure rates above 7% by 100,000 miles. But they never told you, because a recall would cost them $400 million. Most people think the 5.0L Coyote is bulletproof. It's not. The Coyote has a different problem, and it's arguably worse. The 2018-2025 5.0L uses a plastic timing chain tensioner arm, not metal, plastic. That plastic arm has a tiny oil passage. When that passage gets restricted, the tensioner collapses instantly. But here is the terrifying part about the Coyote. It doesn't rattle when the tensioner fails. It just shears the camshaft sprocket bolts. I've personally replaced 3 Coyote engines where the customer said, there was no noise, it just shut off. When we pulled the timing cover, the chain was still intact, but the sprocket bolts were snapped clean off, and those bolts are torque to yield. That means they're designed to stretch exactly once. When the timing chain gets loose and jerks the sprocket, the bolts exceed their stretch limit. Snap! Now your camshaft isn't turning, now your valves are hitting pistons, now your engine is a paperweight. But here's the scary part. Ford doesn't sell those bolts separately. You have to buy the entire sprocket kit, $600, plus labor. And most dealers will just tell you to buy a new engine. Let's talk about the real financial disaster. Not just the repair, the avalanche. Here is what a timing chain failure actually costs. Towing, $250 because it failed on the highway at 6 p.m. Diagnostic, $200. Dealer charges you just to say engine is dead. Rental car, $600 for 2 weeks while you decide what to do. Lost work, 3 days dealing with shops, insurance and loan approvals. Used engine, $5,500 with 80,000 miles and an unknown history. Installation, $2,500, 12 hours of labor. Fluids and gaskets, $400. Surprise costs. When the shop finds your oil cooler is also clogged with chain guide debris. Another $800. Total, over $10,000. And your truck's resale value just dropped $5,000 because it now has a replaced engine on Carfax, so that $55,000 investment is now worth $28,000. You lost $27,000 in value from a $38 tensioner. And this is where the dealership wins and you lose. You take your truck to the dealer for a weird noise. The service advisor listens for 3 seconds, then says, "Sounds normal to me. All the 3.5s sound like that." Here is the truth. They know exactly what's wrong. Ford has sent them multiple TSBs about timing chain noise, but if they admit it's a problem, they have to fix it under warranty if you're still covered. So they lie. And this is where most owners get trapped. They say monitor it until your warranty expires. Then suddenly, the noise is a problem. And here's your $7,500 estimate. I've watched this happen over 40 times. One customer had a 2016 with 59,000 miles. Dealer said no issue. At 62,000 miles, 3,000 miles out of warranty, the chain snapped. Dealer quoted $9,200. When the customer showed them the original service record where they said no issue, the dealer offered a $500 discount. $500 on a $9,000 failure they caused by lying. Wait, it gets worse. Some dealers will actually tell you the timing chain is maintenance, not a warranty item. That's a lie. The Magnuson-Moss Act says they have to prove your maintenance caused the failure, but they know you won't hire a lawyer over $8,000, so they win. The chain fails without a rattle, but it doesn't fail without any warning. You just don't know what to look for. Here are 4 silent signs that your timing chain is dying right now. Sign 1. Your oil pressure gauge reads lower than normal at hot idle. If you're below 15 psi, your tensioner isn't getting enough pressure. Sign 2. Rough idle that comes and goes. The computer is trying to compensate for timing drift. It'll smooth out at higher RPM, then get rough again at stoplights. Sign 3. Metal flakes in your oil, not chunks. Tiny glitter. That's the chain grinding against the broken guide bracket. Sign 4. A single clunk when you shut off the engine. That's the tensioner losing pressure and the chain dropping onto the guide. But here is the warning sign that 99% of owners miss completely. Your fuel economy drops by 2 mpg. That timing drift makes the engine less efficient. Your computer adds more fuel to compensate. Most owners think it's winter gas or a dirty air filter. It's not. It's your timing chain slowly dying. And every mile you drive like that grinds metal into your oil, which destroys your turbochargers on the EcoBoost. 2 new turbos, $4,000. Now your $8,000 timing job is a $12,000 nightmare. If you own an F-150 right now, here is how you avoid the $8,000 mistake. Step 1. Change your oil every 3,500 miles. Not 5,000, not 7,500, 3,500. Use full synthetic only. The additive package prevents sludge in that tiny tensioner feed hole. Step 2. Install an oil pressure gauge that reads in PSI. The factory dummy gauge is useless. A real gauge costs $80. It will save you $8,000. Step 3. At 80,000 miles, replace the timing chain tensioner proactively. Not the whole chain, just the tensioner. It's a $38 part, 2 hours of labor. That $300 job prevents a $8,000 failure. And this is where most owners get trapped. They wait for the rattle. But the rattle means the chain is already stretched and the guides are already broken. Replace the tensioner at 80,000 miles, even if everything sounds fine. But here's the scary part. If you have a 2011, 2012, or 2015, 2017, the tensioner isn't the only problem. You also need the upgraded timing chain from the 2018 model. The 2018 chain is 12% thicker. It doesn't stretch. Ford released this updated part, but never announced it. You have to ask for part number HL3Z6268A. Most parts counter guys don't even know it exists. If your chain already failed, or you're hearing the death rattle, you need the full job. And here is where most shops will destroy your engine again. The cheap quote is $2,500. They replace just the chain and tensioner. That repair fails again in 20,000 miles. Here is the correct repair. Replace the timing chain. Replace both tensioners, primary and secondary. Replace all 3 guides. Replace the VCT phasers. Replace the oil pump if you have over 100,000 miles. Replace the water pump while the front cover is off. That's the while you're in there rule. The water pump is $120. To replace it later is $800 in labor because the timing cover has to come off again. Do it now. Total cost for the full correct repair, $3,800 to $4,500. Yes, it's more than the cheap quote, but it lasts 150,000 miles. The cheap quote fails at 20,000 miles. Then you pay again. And here is the most important part that almost every mechanic gets wrong. The torque sequence on the camshaft sprocket bolts. If your mechanic doesn't use a torque angle gauge, those bolts will loosen. Then your phaser fails. Then your new chain stretches. Ask your shop, do you torque angle the cam bolts? If they say we just use an impact gun, walk out. Drive to a different shop. That single bolt kills more rebuilt engines than anything else. Look, I'm not telling you to sell your truck. The F-150 is a great platform. When it's running right, it's the best truck on the road. But the timing chain system has a fatal flaw, and Ford has known about it for over a decade. They chose profits over reliability, so now the responsibility falls on you. You can change your oil every 3,500 miles. You can install that $80 oil pressure gauge. You can replace the tensioner at 80,000 miles, or you can ignore this. And one morning, you'll turn the key. Click. The mechanic will call. He'll say tensioner failed. He'll ask for $8,400. And you'll remember this video. But here's the last thing you need to know. If you have a 2021 or newer Power Boost hybrid, the timing chain tensioner is electric, not hydraulic. It has a different failure mode. The electric solenoid sticks closed. Then the tensioner never pressurizes. And Ford just released a silent recall on 2021-2022 models for exactly this. Check your VIN right now. If you see recall 22S43, your tensioner is on the list. Don't wait for the letter. The letter comes after the failure. If you want to avoid costly mistakes like this, stick around. I tear down failed Ford engines every week so you don't have to. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and drop your F-150's mileage in the comments. I'll tell you if you're in the danger zone. If you're between 80,000 and 120,000 miles and you haven't done the tensioner yet, you're gambling $8,000 every time you start the engine. Don't gamble, fix it, or pay for it. Your choice. A $38 part, a 3,500-mile oil change, an $80 gauge. That's all that separates you from a $10,000 repair bill. Ford won't tell you. The dealer won't admit it. But now you know. Ignore this, and you'll pay for it. Simple.